Welcome to the People Data for Good podcast with Adamsen.
Hi, welcome back. Hey, I'm very excited to be with Arnaud Grunwald of Betterworks and Ian Cook of Visier. Gentlemen, how you two doing?
Doing well, thanks, Sal.
Arnaud?
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Hey, Arnaud, I know you're hot and they're in Oakland, California. If you would, please introduce yourself and what you all have going there at Betterworks.
Yeah, my name is Arnaud Grunwald. I'm a Chief Product Officer here at Betterworks. I've been in the company for a year and a half. Previously, I was the CEO and co-founder of a company called Hyphen. Hyphen was an employee engagement platform, so a sort of glint and culture and competitor. Doug Dennerlein, the CEO of Betterworks, and we saw a strategic opportunity to join forces. So I'll tell you more things I'm sure about Betterworks, but this is me, very, very excited to be on this podcast with you two today.
Well, excited that you're here because I certainly heard of Hyphen and certainly heard of Betterworks. So it's very interesting that you two have come together. I want to hear more about that. And obviously you have a partnership with Visier. So Ian, if you would introduce yourself and what you all are doing, and particularly in relation to this relationship with Betterworks.
Yeah, for sure. So Visier, our mission is to just really liberate people data, allow people to not spend all the time stitching it together, but just spend the time using it and making better people decisions. So we take an approach where we're system agnostic or data agnostic. We think it's more important to be able to get access, get that access distributed to lots of players so that you can make important decisions about performance, about engagement, about turnover, about compensation, all of that huge mess of people data that we need to use to run our businesses. And we see our role in this system as a sort of hub of the ecosystem of all these various different applications that are doing new and powerful things to help people understand their business, such as Betterworks.
Well, if I'm listening to this podcast, I looked over and I saw a representative from Betterworks and I see someone from Visier. So playing word association, Betterworks, OKRs, Visier, people analytics. So Arnaud, if you would, just what's the relationship between OKRs? And if you want to take time a bit to define what that is, I would be very interested and again, on behalf of our listeners, what's the connective tissue there in your view?
Yeah, OKRs is one of the things that Betterworks is a leader in. It stands for Objectives and Key Results, and it's a methodology that people use to align their organizations around key top company objectives that people have visibility to and can align to. It of course creates focus, it creates alignment, it creates transparency and commitment. And also there's a component of OKRs that allows for people to define their stretch goals. So you can have better visibility as to what you must achieve and what you're stretching to achieve. I think what's key is to understand that OKRs by themselves are interesting, but are not a superpower. They are a superpower when they're married with good people enablement. And that's what we do at Betterworks. We try to close the loop continuously between the strategy, people's work, and the people themselves. Enabling managers to have the information, to have the data to guide and coach teams and individuals. So we're sitting on a goldmine of data, I think. We know what people are working on. We know what counts for them, what motivates them. We know what their progress is throughout the quarter or throughout the year. We know what feedback, what recognition they're getting from their peers. And since the Hyphen acquisition, we know if they are engaged and what is engaging them, what motivates them. So all this data comes together, and the tie-up with people analytics is natural, right? So partnering with Visier for us is very natural. We have a lot of data that is just critical in guiding business leaders, managers, HRs, and even individual contributors.
I love it. Ian, your view on the matching between what was just shared and what you all at Visier do. I have my own narrative. I'm getting all excited just thinking about it. So you take it away.
No, I think Arnaud puts it extremely well. I mean, our picture of Visier, we've spent a long time thinking about people analytics and how do you do it well. We actually have a conceptual framework for the various different pieces of data that you need to truly understand a human being. And I break that down into like situation, where do I work? Sentiment, how do I feel? Capabilities, what am I good at? And collaboration, what's my network? And all of that rolls down into production. And I can't, we've struggled, and many folks have struggled with this. What is production? Do you count how much was sold? Do you count how many hours somebody works? Like you can see the creepy tech that captures your screen and decides if you're working or not, which we all hate. And when I look at Betterworks and this notion of the OKR, the percent progression, the ability of the individual to take a company goal and then sort of invest how they want to support that into that methodology, it starts to give us a really positive and meaningful framework for what is production. Like, what is the work? How is that work aligned? What are the results and progression that somebody's doing that gets it away from, the manager's perception of whether you're working hard? It gets it away from some of the challenges in terms of how many lines of code did I write? It's like, who cares? Less code is better. It's like, how did your code run is more interesting than how much did I write? So it gives us this really important frame for that area. And again, Betterworks is broader than the production piece. There's the sentiment and the recognition and the production. So we see that as a very natural piece of data, really important piece of data that, again, doesn't live in other places. The tools that are developed like Betterworks to focus on this, have, again, they're closed loop. They leverage an HRS, but they're focused on effectiveness rather than the transactional efficiency. So we see that as just an essential part of this evolving ecosystem, sometimes described as work tech, which is all about making work purposeful and helping people do it at their best. So we see it as a very natural extension in the ecosystem that we are trying to facilitate, be part of. And there's we're not in the generation process with the data, but we are in the how do we leverage it to its maximum by that 1 + 1 = 3 kind of piece.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying. And, Arnaud, I want to go back to you, because we have the situation as many organizations are returning to the workplace. And there's a bunch of research that suggests that people got itchy feet, that either their organization did not respond well to COVID, or just given life transitions that they want to work closer to their home. Any number of reasons are driving this need, this desire to move jobs. And so it's not only how people are thinking about their work experience, it's about what they're actually doing at work. And to your point, Arnaud, what are the drivers of it? So can you explain, as leaders are formulating return to work strategies and really hybrid work strategies ongoing, why is it so important for them to have this activity data, this goal data, the sentiment data all in one place? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's no surprise that the employee engagement market and the employee experience market and the OKR market are blooming during this crisis, and it will continue as organizations have moved to a fully remote or a hybrid way of working. Basically, this health crisis has exacerbated trends that were already existing, that people want to belong. They want to understand why they wake up, why they get out of bed and get in front of the computer. They want to be part of an organization where they understand their contribution and if that's meaningful, right? And they want to know that people care about their contribution and care about themselves and care about their development. So all that was facilitated by in-office work, right? You would meet people, you would grab lunch, you would grab coffee, you would meet people in the corridors. And now that we've gotten to this extreme of sitting in front of Zoom all day long, people are craving for a way to understand how they fit in, right? So having objectives that are clearly defined, where you know what you have to accomplish, but also you know how it's aligned to how it's going to make your team successful, how it's going to make your team members successful, your coworkers successful, how these objectives and key results are interrelated and connect to each other. That's really important to understand kind of the mesh or the web that you belong to. And then at the next level, how the team will make your function or your department successful, and how your department actually feeds into the top company goal. So that sense of belonging that is so important is being helped in great ways by a system like OKRs, plus a performance enablement system that ensures that these things are not just documentation. You need to add the people aspect to it, where managers talk to employees and they bring other contributors in the conversations, and you make sure that not necessarily through Zoom, but in an asynchronous way, you can have coaching conversations that are documented, where development is being talked about, where objectives are being talked about, and it's very clear what the next steps are. So I rumbled a bit there, but it just, this pandemic has exacerbated these needs from an individual contributor perspective, from a team manager perspective. HR needs this information. They need to know that everybody's in good hands being coached appropriately, and business leaders up to the CEO need to know that everybody's working from their bedrooms, but yet they are working towards, they're all rowing in the same direction. So that's how it all fits in.
There's something that Arnaud hit on that I think is perfect and really needs to be doubled down, which is, a few people have said, like, why is this different than performance module that I used to get in, whatever brand of HRIS that you had? And it's the performance system in whatever brand of HRIS was simply the record keeping. It was where, after we've had the conversations and we've done the forms, we've done all that stuff, it was literally like where the data was kept. So if you needed to refer to it later for whatever reason it was, what I see in the Betterworks is that whole social engagement in the meaning of the work, the line of sight, and it not being just manager to individual, but peer to individual. So the recognition piling in, like, so it really does build meaning around work, and all of us are questing for that. And as you say, the pandemic, I was reading something recently that, the amount of time that we've had to go for walks on our own, or, sit in our flat and stare at the wall, whatever it might be, has triggered so many more people to think, like, what do I truly want to do with life? And that's a whole big part of the, whether you call it, I've seen it called the great work migration, the great resignation, like, who knows, but our data shows it. Our customers we're talking to are experiencing it, this massive amount of work change that is coming, not always triggered by the employer, sometimes triggered by the employee going, like, I've been sat here doing this for years because it was what I did, and I was so busy doing it, I didn't have the impetus to change. A forced stop, a sudden shock like a crisis, just generating massive amounts of change. So I love the way that Arnaud describes that engagement of the person and the community around the person in the cycle of building meaning, because I think that is very, very differentiating and very key in how we build our processes and our thinking about employees and what work means as we go forward. There's a reason we tried to get rid of performance management a few years ago.
Yeah. I want to pick, Arnaud, you go ahead. Then I have something to say, but you go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add that, this shift home and working with people who work from home has also increased the emphasis on simplicity, ease of use, systems that are intuitive. And that's a reason why we're partnering with Visier, because we're in that same boat, right?
Yeah.
Yes, of course, defining your goals at an individual, team, company level is nothing new. Getting coaching or performance management conversations, that's not new either. And people analytics and bridging the data or visualizing the data, that's nothing new. And HRIS systems are doing it in an old school way, that is the system of record, system of compliance kind of way. Visier and Betterworks were systems of engagement and systems of intelligence, systems that are intuitive, that are made for user engagement, that translates into employee engagement, and also ease to get insights out of the data.
Yeah, I love what you both are saying. And if I'm a CHRO or head of talent or somebody who's in a decision-making capacity in an organization, and I'm listening, I'm going, yes, yes, yes. And I'm also thinking OKRs. Okay, that's operations. That's like at a manager level to actually identify work and help prioritize and all that. And people analytics, that's probably HRIS. And then we have, say, IT, dealing with collaboration systems and all that. We have facilities involved in identifying where people are working, how they're going to be resourced, with everything from, chairs to desks to, whatever they need to get work done and on down the line. And I'm getting to this question, is that many organizations have dabbled in certain process. They made decisions in certain process and commitments in certain process. And what I'm hearing you two talking about is a holistic approach where you're truly thinking about the employee experience, the underlying data, and the insights that that's generating. And I have long been trumpeting, and others have as well, that we're in need of new management models. We're in need of new governance frameworks to understand all these different facets and try and align them and bring them together. So Arnaud, what are your thoughts about this notion of having new forums by which to make these more holistic decisions? Is that something that you're seeing or advocating, or do you still see maybe HR or operations taking the lead and adopting these types of solutions?
Yeah, there's still a bit of both. If you, we're past the chasm, but not in the great masses kind of adoption. Customers still come single-threaded sometimes. HR wants a new performance enablement, performance management system, but they also realize that people need to know what they're working on. Others realize that there's a disconnect between their top-level strategy and individual contributor or teamwork. They realize that there's overlap between projects, there's lack of transparency, people are not utilized in an optimal way, so they really want to set up an OKR system. But there's more and more people who come to us and visualize the holistic view because they live the disconnect and they realize it's the great disease in their company, right? They realize that people are working on stuff, leadership is expecting something else, people coaching and development is happening but taking a back seat because there's always something more urgent to do. And so at the end of the day, it just makes sense to bring everything together. Like we're releasing a product soon that is very simple. It's a product for one-on-ones. Today, people do one-on-ones in their Google Docs, in their Evernote, on Post-it notes, or in their notebooks. It's completely contextless, right? What we're doing is simple. We're connecting the dots between your one-on-one conversations with your manager, but also with any of your peers, and your context. What is the feedback that you have gotten in the past 7 days? What is the progress that you've made on your objectives and key results? What are the Udemy for Business courses that you've taken? How have you progressed? And all this transparency creates context for a good conversation, whether it is with peers or with managers or with your entire team. So that's a very simple example how connecting the dots is just adding richness to all conversations and and value to companies.
Yeah, very well said. Ian, I know you have thoughts on that, particularly given the fact that we're in this quote unquote, and I've heard this from you, this modern era, and that, people management is, needs to evolve. So, I mean, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I was doing some digging and research just this past week for a couple of sessions, and I kind of came across two things that I sensed but hadn't seen the data on. The first is the amount of uncertainty, like the speed at which, everything Arnaud describes, completely agree and have seen those cycles, but the speed at which business is moving now, you can't afford to have those weaknesses. Like, you don't have 3 months to go in the wrong direction and then suddenly work it out. I also, the older generation who have been comfortable in those processes, they're retiring at 3 times the rate. So we've been talking for a long time about the impact of millennials in work, and they're going from half the workforce to 2/3 of the workforce. That we're living and working in that space. And so I think employers kind of ignore this future state at their peril, because if there's a notion of like, oh, thank goodness it's over, we can kind of just fall back on all of the habits that we have, I think people are in for a rude shock in terms of employees voting with their feet. Yes. and taking themselves elsewhere and finding more fruitful environments where they feel like they can work and contribute. So we see that, we get pulled into it. It's the whole reason our ecosystem openness started. It was pulled. We were pulled into it by clients. It's like, we're working with these people and these people. We want you to work together so that we don't have to have the pain. And you guys seem like you share our values. You seem like you share our drive. Can you please work together? And we're like, yeah, that makes tons of sense. So we've seen what it's like as organizations are trying to get out of that single threaded, like, reporting over here and, something else over here and something else over here, to actually think about the work as the thing and people as the creators of it and joining it up. So I think I feel like we're at the wave. Like, some will fall back on the wrong side of the wall and others will charge over and carry on. I know which side I think you need to be on, but I think it's inevitable because of the forces at play in terms of who's working and what they expect from work.
Well, I mean, to your point there, Ian, we're not only drinking the Kool-Aid, we're making the Kool-Aid. And so, that you said, and again, I'm not going to fall into groupthink here, in that, oh gosh, this is the right way and it's the only way. That being said, I want to emphasize a point. We are in a different space. Obviously, the pandemic, obviously with what has evolved with pursuit of social justice, with Black Lives Matter and diversity, equity, and inclusion historically, and I'm just going to call it as I have seen it over the last 20 years. It's been a noble initiative, but it's kind of been a checkbox to say, yeah, we're doing that. And we have one person with that title and they're not empowered. But now it's at the board level, there are measures, there are, need to create not only feelings of inclusion, but real sense of safety, psychologically, emotionally, and of course, physically. So, Arnaud, going back to you because you mentioned at the outset, creating this sense of belonging and inclusion. What do you think the value proposition for this type of solution that you're bringing to market is to tackle the ongoing challenge, the perpetual challenge of elevated inclusion, safety, diversity, equity, and inclusion? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, we've never done as many pulse surveys as in 2020. I think it grew 4 times or something like that for and acquired customers because of that need as well. It is telling that organizations continue to realize that they need to listen to their employees more often, more frequently, because engagement is not something that is measured once a year and then remains flat. It keeps evolving depending on the context and the, if events outside of the company, events inside of the company. So you need to keep measuring and collecting comments and analyzing all this. We've also seen, so that's on the measurement side. On the action side, so of course, once you do a pulse survey, you need to identify your areas for improvement. You turn that into an action plan. One click, it turns into an OKR, right? It needs to be that simple. And it's another example of closing the loop, which is pretty unique to what we do. But on the action side, we've actually seen a number of our customers define DEI categories and top company goals that people could align to. And I know we do it here at Betterworks. Betterworks is very big on DEI. We have about a third of the organization that is actively involved in a DEI group that continues to think about these kind of social issues. But we've also established a top company goal. So top company goals are not only about executing on the strategy and getting business results. It's also about what company do we want to become. And we really advocate and encourage our customers to have at least one company goal that is about values, about culture, right? So that people can understand what is top priority for you in terms of culture and how you want to shift who you are as a company. And then teams see that and then can align, right? So we're the engineering team. What are we going to do to align to the DEI initiative that's at the company level? And so you can see, because OKRs is not only top down, it's not going to be the CEO saying, hey, you guys do this, you guys do that. Mm-hmm. It's about showing the true north in terms of what kind of company we want to become, and then providing visibility to everyone. And then the teams can decide for themselves in a bottoms up kind of way, how do we want to align? What is specific to the engineering team that really resonates? Is it about hiring? Is it about, inviting a guest speaker? Is it about talking about these things? They can shape it the way they want, but at least it's aligned with the true north that the CEO has defined. So these are a couple of ways that we've seen our customers use Betterworks this year.
Ian?
Just to double in, as Arnaud was talking, lots of light bulbs going on as usual. Because we've seen something aligned to that setting of objectives and being able to distribute it. In the Visier world, we have the data around how is my piece of the business doing relative to the objective. So it really is this distribution of both where are we trying to get to, where are we as a specific group, not these lofty information up here and it's all very nice, but we don't really know how we affect it. It's that cascade of the target and the data down to that decision-making level. So somebody can see what the company goal is, where their population is. And we know it causes that reflection on all of those little decisions. It's like, oh, I don't have any women on my slate here. I'm going to wait and I'm going to go back to the recruiter and say, we need to do better. We need to find a way to bring in a person of color, a woman, somebody with some semblance of difference into this slate because we're not ready to move forward. And that's the hiring manager making the decision. When you don't have the data, you don't have the alignment, you don't have any of that available, it's like, where are we at? What do we need to do next? You run off gut and you run off pressure. So you do the wrong things, not for the wrong reasons, but just because you haven't got a means to see what could happen. I think that's one element. The second is the really big piece around hybrid work that, again, I think where the methodology around a level playing field and core visibility through data of everybody is going to be essential. One of the biggest fears that you hear expressed is if I don't go back into the office and people are in the office, are they going to get ahead because the manager sees them and they don't see me? Like, how do I know that you as an organization are going to be fair? And there's so many opportunities for bias through that system. If you have parental responsibilities, then if I can work from home, I'm likely going to, am I now disadvantaged in my career? Like, on all of that cycle goes on. So like these kinds of tools start to liberate, they show intent from the business to say, we're not going to gauge it on, does your manager like you or not? You know, we've all lived those worlds. We're going to gauge it on the data.
Right. Yeah. What you're sharing, both of you, brings a story to mind for me. And it's this: I had a CEO, not a CHRO, a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company say, Al, I feel like I'm flying blind. And this was a while ago now. And the back of my mind that immediately came to my thoughts was, you really don't know how blind. Like you're really, really blind. And I didn't mean that from a critical place. I meant that being very aware of the opportunity cost of not leveraging the data that was possible. So this will land in a question, so bear with me. Because at the time, the effort to get the data was difficult. It was expensive. It was risky, and even the lag time to aggregate, analyze, generate the insight, take appropriate action. It wasn't a few clicks, like you were saying, or no. It was days and sometimes weeks. And so fast forward now, I would have said, here's a dashboard. Here's a cockpit. You can now fly not blind. You can fly by instruments, but they're old school instruments. Now we have very sophisticated instrument. We have an instrument panel that's pretty cool. And now you're making a choice not to use this very sophisticated, detailed, actionable control panel. And I would put forth that it is irresponsible for a senior leader, CEO, CHRO, or anybody else to not use these dashboards. So now it invites the question, all right, Al, I agree. We're making the Kool-Aid. Why do you not think more CEOs, CHROs, and the like aren't adopting this more holistic approach and getting this more sophisticated dashboard in front of them? Ian, how about you go first?
Yeah, I'll happily go first. I think the key pieces, I would say, has been distraction. It's been the distraction of which technology should I use, some notion of digital transformation, some notion of hype, and sometimes this notion that the problem is too big. So just the distraction of all of the noise is see as a big impediment. That's probably the primary one for me that I see, is like, oh, I'll get to that because I don't really understand how it works. Right. I think there's something there, but I'm not quite sure what. I'm not quite sure how to be successful. So I will go to areas where I'm more familiar and more comfortable.
Yeah, I've been a leader for 20, 30 years. I haven't had to use this cockpit. I haven't used to do this dashboard. I'll just keep flying and keep going. Arnaud, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that business leaders have a lot of competing priorities. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of why nots.
Yeah, right.
Why not Salesforce, and why not, so in every part of the business, there can be an argument for digital transformation and modernization and use of analytics. I think it takes a little bit of luck for us that customers sometimes stumble upon a tough situation and they realize, wow, I can't fly blind anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So to give an example, if they have a DEI problem and they realize now, well, in Betterworks, they have strategic objectives. They know who's getting development objectives, right? And through Visier, they can slice and dice that by gender, by ethnicity. Then it's going to be a compelling value proposition at the time that they need it. But you just need either the right person also to be in the organization, to have that experience and it resonates to them, and they have the the karma points to influence their senior leadership, or senior leadership that is either in a tough situation or acutely aware and with a great foresight. So it just takes time, and as in everything, you have the early adopters and the laggards.
Yeah,
just one quick
yeah,
thing.
go ahead, Ian.
There's some great insight in what Arnaud was sharing, because I was just thinking what we've seen recently is an awful lot of new people analytics leaders, either people that are in our sphere who've gone to a new place, or new people analytics leaders jobs starting up. And it is, to Arnaud's point, a lot of those people are being hired because they're experts, they've walked the path before. The businesses are now realizing, okay, if I have to do this, I have to get together with people who can help me walk the path, whether that's hiring somebody specifically or going with vendors who know how to walk that path. But I definitely think there's a change. I think in the past there was distractions. Now it's much more a case of, okay, we need to get this solved. We can't live without data.
Yeah, and thank you for emphasizing that point, because that leads into the question that came to mind, in that when I first started doing this work 20 odd years ago, I termed it as we were doing it on an event-driven basis, meaning, okay, we aggregated data, we analyzed it, we pushed it out, created a deck, and hopefully something happened. Great. And the primary customer was HR leadership and maybe operations or senior leadership, all fine and good. But now we're in this place where, and I talk about the 3 S's: speed, scale, and sustainability. So it needs to be fast. We need to do it at scale, and it needs to be ongoing. So that means that we're not doing it on an event-driven basis. We're doing it on an ongoing basis. That means an ecosystem of technologies. The idea that we're going to have one technology and it's going to solve all our problems, hopefully the world has said, okay, that's not going to happen. So we're going to have to accept this ecosystem. And so my pointed question to you, and Arnaud, I'll toss it over to you, is that HRIT has kind of, okay, we have that system, we have that performance system, and maybe communications or somebody else has an engagement survey that they're running over here, and then there's core HR, and then sometimes the ATS, or there's a recruiting system, elsewhere. So there's all this stuff, all over. So increasingly, correct me if I'm wrong, people analytics leaders and employee experience leaders, they might be one and the same in some organizations, have to not only understand the ecosystem in its current state and how to aggregate and analyze the data, but they need to have a roadmap to enhance that ecosystem over time, in my view. So what are your thoughts there? Because you mentioned before that sometimes they bring in like one point of your solution, and they might need it to fill a gap in that ecosystem, and it might evolve from there. But Arnaud, what are your thoughts on organizations needing to understand and truly manage this ecosystem in an integrated way over time?
Yeah, they need help, because it's very difficult to connect systems. And I think there's a stat that the average HR team is managing 18 or 20 software as a service systems currently. Yeah. And not all of them are well connected and communicate. So if you have silos, then it duplicates the work, and you need to track things, the same KPIs in different systems, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a lot of what we educate the market on. It's around, of course, we have our modules, we have our functionality, but it's why we do well in the market is our tentacles into the market, right? That are built into our product, and also towards other systems of work and analytics outside of our product. And what I mean by that is you can't expect people to come into a platform like Betterworks every day, right? But you should expect people to interact with Betterworks every day through plugins, like in your Gmail, in your Outlook, in Microsoft Teams, having a Slack bot, etc. You need to give people the opportunity of seeing data and reacting to data. So that's in product. But then there's also a bunch of, you need to be integrated with the rest of the world, especially when you're measuring key results you need automation. So if a salesperson doesn't want to do work in Salesforce and then come into Betterworks and key in, every time they sign a deal, it needs to be automated. So having a very solid set of APIs, having an integration platform, there's a market that's actually pretty fascinating with Tray.io and Workato and Cloud Elements of the world that helps connect all these pieces. So you need to reassure customers, especially in the enterprise space, right? Yep. That things speak to each other. In the SMB space, the buyers are looking for sort of a one-size-fits-all or one box that doesn't have best in class, but it's all under the same URL. In the enterprise, they're willing to be patient and to do some extra work to benefit from point solutions that are best in class, but they need to be reassured that either currently or you have a roadmap to connect well with the Visiers of the world.
Yeah. I'm going to segue to this question, and I believe it to be true. You and I have talked about it in the past, but I believe there's a value proposition to prioritize people analytics above these transactional systems in certain cases, with the reasoning being that you're beginning with the end in mind. You understand how the data is going to be used and analyzed to inform not only top level, talent strategy, but the employee experience, how it's going to benefit individuals. What are your thoughts there? Because I know this is a point of passion for you.
Yeah, well, we actually have some really great examples. Back in May, we ran Outsmart conference. We had Melissa Cantor from Lego. We had somebody from Unilever and Rob Etheridge from Deutsche Bank, all of whom did analytics first. And the reason they went that way was because they knew they needed to understand their data and how are they going to use it prior to putting in some new process. It's the classic thing, our process is broken, let's put in a new process technology, and we end up with the same broken process in a new technology. Like all of us have lived that. Whereas the taking the data out, looking at the shape, the structure, the what happens, when and how, enable those businesses actually to make the case for the need for a new HRS. So it was part of their business case and then it de-risked the implementation. And it's kind of David and Goliath. Like the investment in people analytics is the David, and then the investment in the HRS is the Goliath. So why you would spend that tens of millions when you can spend $500,000 and take all the risk out? Any finance person would automatically see that as a valuable spend. But it'd been a view of ours for some time, and we now have some really great substantive examples of customers that have done it and done it successfully and used it to then implement Workday, but fed by what their understanding of the data was through application of Visier first.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that, because Nikki Clement at Unilever I've had the great pleasure of working with her and her team for a number of years now. And yeah, it is a fantastic example of beginning with the end in mind and really having that be the narrative that you're taking to other leaders to earn budget, to deliver insight and value, on an ongoing basis. So I hope more adopt, that approach. It does take some facilitation. It does take, in other words, knowing how to fly the plane, knowing how to drive the car, whatever you want to put it forth. And, that's part of my job. I think it's all our jobs to educate the community on what it takes to not only select appropriate solutions, but to implement and scale and drive impact that's intentional over time. So we have time for probably one or two more questions, but Ian, I know you have one more comment on that.
I'll just say one more comment, because it goes to that, how do you scale the ecosystem? And it's why organizations like Visier and Betterworks are keen to share this conversation, because as well as being friends in the market, behind the scenes, we understand each other's tech. We understand how data flows back and forth. Because what I'm seeing is when our enterprise clients, switch on something like Betterworks, it's not, a year later that they suddenly wonder, well, how else can we leverage the data? It can literally be a month. So, we're in conversations where, we're thinking of standing up Betterworks. We've signed the deal. We want to know how this is going to flow over to Visier. So for our organizations, it totally makes sense to be ahead of that challenge, to share the information, to understand schemas, to understand data flows, to really be built out to say yes to the customer and have solved the problems before the customer has the problems. And that's part of what it means to be an ecosystem player, is to have that openness, the willingness, the sharing of IP, the understanding of how each other, the playing together is actually stronger, better for the customer. And that's another key piece around this ecosystem.
Yeah, no, I think it's a smart way to position, because obviously, to your point, it makes it easier for the customer at the end of the day that you have a relationship and that the data can flow, and you can deliver value beyond just what you offer independently. So, kudos to you for being forward thinking in that regard. So as we start to wrap here, Arnaud, final comments, and how can people learn more about you and Betterworks?
About me, I'm on LinkedIn. I share a lot of stuff, probably too much. People can reach out to me at Arnaud with a D, ARNAUD, at betterworks.com. Yeah, and learn about Betterworks. We'd be more than happy to tell you how we close that loop between strategy people and results. And do
you have a graphic on that, by the way? Do you have any graphic on strategy, people, and results? I'm just kidding.
We do. It's usually sitting here.
For anyone listening or viewing, you will see that 100%. You will see that if you go to betterworks.com or you see this podcast or anywhere. We'll make sure you know exactly what we're talking about.
It's all about closing the loop. We've been fortunate also to have the backing of amazing investors, and we just released a couple of weeks back that we raised $61 million. So I was able to double the size of the product team. We doubled the size of the engineering team. We have great tailwind in our sales, and we're moving fast. We have a very exciting roadmap, and so yeah, I'd be super happy to share some of that with your audience.
All right. Thanks, Arnaud. Ian, closing comment?
Yeah, just again, excited to have the connection with Betterworks and really help people understand the need to think about the world of work being different. Whilst we might be moving into a vaccinated world and more mobile again, it's really a waste of a crisis if we fall back on old habits. Really love the way that Betterworks enables people to connect with work, and then bringing that into that whole holistic picture of how do we understand and really help people thrive is kind of a big part of what drives Visier. Learning more about Visier, our website's the best place, visier.com. We have a Clarity blog. We have a bunch of information around how do you get started, how do we do this. Many of the people who speak at Al's conference every year are Visier clients. We have a pretty stellar list of people who've been driving this practice forward for a long time. And then personally, LinkedIn is the best place to find me. I share stuff. I manage a debate every Thursday on all things people analytics. So please do reach out, and I'll happy to share.
Well, again, thanks to you both. And I'll just say I am uncommonly excited about the relationship that you two have. I have long talked about activity-based data and behavioral data. In other words, what people actually do, as well as their intentions. I heard stretch goals, and the fact that you can juxtapose that data with what is happening financially, what is happening with key HR metrics. I mean, the context that you all deliver together is, again, uncommon. So congratulations on what you've achieved, and look forward to the future with you two. It's going to be exciting. So thank you.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and thank you for having us.
Of course. All right, gentlemen, you be well. Hope to see you in person before too long.
Thanks, Al.
All right. Be well. Bye.
Thanks for joining the People Data for Good podcast with Al Adamsen. To find other podcasts, videos, upcoming events, and to join the People Data for Good movement, please visit us at PAFOW.net.